Center here at Prince George Community College, and I want to welcome you to the college. We're very excited about the partnership that we're developing with the Prince George County Tech Council, and we yesterday announced a new initiative called the Cyber Ready Clinic, which will help citizens of the county and businesses of the county ensure that they're adequately protected against cyber threats. So you'll be hearing much more about that as time goes on. We're also launching a new research center called the Cognitive Cyber Science Center that will be looking to integrate studies of AI, cloud computing, cybersecurity, and data science. So, but the star of the show, of course, is the Tech Council. So let me go ahead and introduce Eugene Powell. Let him take it from there.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Eugene Powell. I am the president of the Prince George's County Technology Council, and I also am your deputy CIO of Prince George's County. So it's my distinct honor to welcome you all to this event. So thank you for giving up your Saturday. I know it's one of the nicer Saturdays that we've had in a while, but I promise we're going to make this worth it. So next, I'd like to say a huge thank you to the community college and the staff for lending us the space and all the support that they've given us. We can give them a round of applause for everything. I also would like to thank our elected officials and our county officials as well that have supported us and that will be here later today. From a technology council, just putting us in a position to be useful and move a lot of things forward for the county to make more events like this and offer up opportunities. So a quick bit about the technology council. We're 100% volunteer. So everyone that you see wearing a badge is here to support you if you have any questions, anything that you may need. But our entire executive committee is volunteers. So that means we've all got day jobs, and they've taken a lot of time over the last 4 months to get this organized for you. So our mission overall as a technology council is to empower county residents, businesses, and educators to enhance the understanding, skills, and opportunities in emerging technologies like artificial intelligence. And we're doing that to focus on making Prince George's County a hub for not only entrepreneurship, not only for technology business, but also for artificial intelligence. So our goal is to unite the various organizations across the county to streamline opportunities and events. So that way you don't have, like with the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce or other organizations like that. We want to be, and we are going to be, that central hub to pursue grants and get different opportunities for the county residents. So this event will have speakers and panelists and booths from all over the county aimed at taking away the mystery from artificial intelligence and provide you with opportunities to get you as Prince George's County residents more involved in the community, and also ensure that, like I said, that we are the artificial intelligence hub in the DMV. So please thank your panelists, your speakers, for not only being here today, but also for their continued dedication to you and to the county. So please ask all of your questions, visit every booth that's out there, but most importantly, we ask that you have fun, and we hope you enjoy this event. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. Dr. Aaron Ferguson. He's the CEO of the Hancock Consulting Group, but he also is the technical director of the Cybersecurity Analysis and Mitigations Group in the Cybersecurity Directorate at the National Security Agency. So we're very excited to have him here. And so, Dr. Ferguson.
Can you guys hear me? Okay, great. Thank you. So good morning. Good morning. So let me just deal with the elephant in the room this morning. I know you all are wondering. No? No, no, it's not elephant in the room. This is a real bow tie. All right. It is isn't this is a real bow tie. This is not a clip-on. If you do clip-ons, do you, but this is a real bow tie. But thank you. I'm really glad to be here and I'm really excited about the opportunity to have some discussion. If you're coming here and you expect me to have a lot of slides, I do. I have like 77 slides. So we'll try to get the no, I don't have 77 slides. But I would like it to be interactive. There's a QR code that you can use to ask questions, and you can ask me anything, and I do work for the National Security Agency, so ask me any classified question you want. I won't answer it, but ask me anything you want. All right. All right. Am I doing slides or is somebody else doing slides? I can't hear you. What'd you say? We don't have a mic for me. What'd you say? Yes. What do you think that means? Artificial intelligence. Yeah. It's like a robot. Yes. Yes. Okay. What about you, young man? Oh, I'm gonna get you a mic because we want people to hear what you have to say.
Testing.
Artificial intelligence is a software that's continuously growing and learning.
That's absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. What is your name?
Idris.
And what is your name?
Nasli.
All right. So can you give them a hand for asking the first questions? Didn't even hesitate. Just ask those questions. So while we're waiting for my slides, well, I can go off script. I'm used to like going off script. But one of the influences of artificial intelligence, it comes along kind of multiple levels. One, everyday life. How many people use Spotify or any type of okay, that's a form of artificial intelligence. Excuse me. My role in NSA, we deal with things where bad people like to do bad things to good people. I'll put it like that. That's the unclassified version of it. So when we think of AI, we think of things like election interference, malign influence campaigns. How many people have gotten email that didn't make any sense saying that, this person did all these bad things? Getting to spear phishing. Years ago, we would get a spear phishing email that would say this person is from Nigeria and they're stuck at the airport and they need you to fax or mail $5,000, right? And usually you'd be able to tell that they were not real because there would be spelling errors, there'll be words that were the wrong tense and things of that nature. Now with AI, it's getting more and more um, really accurate. So AI is really the ability to make sense of what you're saying. So how many people um, have worked with an Excel spreadsheet? All right, and usually your conversation with an Excel spreadsheet is to maybe sort it. So maybe you'll say sort by zip code, sort by last name, things of that nature. Or you can say, give me everybody's um, who has a salary greater than $50,000 and lives in this zip code, right? And so the AI would basically allow you to have a conversation with the data where you can say, tell me everybody who has that salary range in a particular zip code, and then so also tell me what the likelihood that they're exposed to emissions, right? It can give you that holistic perspective of data. So the way it does that, it can say, well, I went out to the internet and I've kind of gotten information that's related to your question, and I'm giving you a more, I'm making sense of what you're saying. I can reason what you're saying, and I can give you a response to that. How many people, and this is totally off script, how many people have used ChatGPT? How many people think it's scary? Nobody thinks it's scary. Okay, I think it's scary. I happen to think it's scary. How many people can explain how ChatGPT works? Who can explain? Yes.
Like you can ask them to write like a 5 paragraph essay on the capital of DC or something like that. And then it's gonna write it so you can just copy and paste it to like a platform.
Well, I'm done here. That is absolutely correct. Thank you so much for that. So one of the things people don't realize about ChatGPT and these technologies is that ChatGPT has no idea what truth means. Has no idea what truth means. Has no idea what's false unless you build in guardrails to it and things of that nature. So here's what the ugly truth is about uh, large language models, which is essentially ChatGPT. Pardon me. Who's like statistics? Most people don't. Think people like statistics? So when you ask it a question, it's basically giving you the most likely response based on some statistical probability. Right. It's saying that. Let me give you a quick test. So people probably in my age group might remember this. A bird in the hand is all right. So ChatGPT would give you that because that's the most likely set of words that follow that question. Right. Don't do tomorrow what you can. Okay. So it's probabilistic, right? So and some of it can be cultural. So some things that are said in certain cultures, ChatGPT has to be trained to know that. So it's very probabilistic. And so that's the thing. People are afraid of, well, if it doesn't know truth and it's just giving me responses based on probability, how do I know I can trust it? All right. And how many people are familiar with the term hallucination within large language models? Not in general, right? Who can explain what hallucination is? Sir, you have to raise your voice unless we'll get the mic off to you.
Typically, hallucinations when large language model just kind of comes up with something out of nowhere, false but sounds true. So good enough as far as it's concerned.
That's exactly right. It starts to make up information based on what it thinks is the highest probability. So there's a whole uh, ethical aspect of AI that we need to understand. Okay, I'll just say, all right. So today, what I was going to cover is kind of what AI is, how it evolved over the next couple of years, last couple of years. We're going to get into kind of the myths about AI, what people think it is. Some people are like, oh, it's going to take my job. One thing I want you to walk away with, of several things, AI and automation are not the same thing, right? You can write a script to automate things. That doesn't mean that that's AI. And AI can do automation, but they're not equivalent all the time. You don't need AI to do automation. We're going to talk about um, cybersecurity and AI. How many people are interested in cybersecurity? All right. And so we'll talk about some bad guys are using large language models to write malware, and it's very, very real, right? And it's even more sophisticated. They can upload a piece of malware code into a large language model and have the large language model translated into a different programming language. Right? So it's very, very scary. They're even using it to say, I want you to tell me all the vulnerabilities of a particular piece of technology, and then tell me who uses these particular pieces of technology. Right? Sometimes a lot of companies will put their clients on their website, and the large language model will go out and get that information and bring it in. So we'll talk about malign influence campaigns. This election coming up, and I'm not going to talk politics at all. I'm just talking about the election. There are countries out there that want to influence our election. How many people are not aware of that? Okay, good. All right. And so that's something that AI is really, countries, specifically, I can say this, China is investing a large amount of money in AI technologies, not just for their military, but also for their ability to influence elections and also their ability to accelerate their position when it comes to technology. Um, what are some other things that I want to talk about? Um, so I want you to walk away with three things. One, first thing I said, AI is not automation. Um, Two, AI and cybersecurity are going to go hand in hand going forward, right? Because with AI, you can do things at a scale that you can't do now. AI is the barrier to entry right now is pretty high. So you have to have a lot of compute in order to really do it. So if you want to build your own um, Chat GPT, you need a lot of compute. So that gets to an access question. And I don't mean like computer access, I mean cultural, our communities being able to access these technologies and being able to kind of play in the game of AI. All right. All right, thank you. All right. See if this. All right, this is my family. All right. I always talk about my family. I have two grown kids who are out the house and off the payroll in that order. That's truly empty nesters. If they're not out the house and off the payroll, you just have empty. You don't have the nest part. Been at National Security Agency 27 years, and my role, I'm the technical director of our cybersecurity threat intelligence group. And so we again deal with bad people who want to do bad things to good people, U.S. citizens, domestically and abroad. I like to do mentorship and coaching, and I enjoy what I do. At the end, I said I really do. And you can, like I said, ask me anything you want. I'll try to um, answer it to the best I can. So this is what we're going to talk about. Introduction to AI. We got the first slide's done, right? We already got the intro over here. Real world uses of AI, because some people, they just kind of. Can you hear me now better? Okay, I gotta hold this closer. All right, we're going to talk about real world uses of AI. Why should you care? And this is kind of my favorite topic: security, trust, explainability. Sometimes they don't call it explainability, but bias, privacy, and security in terms of how AI is really kind of, expanding its touch into those areas. Um, we'll talk about myths. I alluded to that a little bit, and how to protect yourself. Okay, we talked a little bit about what AI is, and again, it's different, not different, but it's related to automation, but it's actually making sense of what you ask it. It's making sense of what it's learned over time, right? And it has, so let me see if I can explain this. When you interact with Chat GPT and you type in a prompt, how many people have asked a follow-up question? And what I mean by that, I can say, give me um, this is going to get people a little upset. Give me the top HBCU in the country. And they would spit back Howard University. Like right away. I don't know why. It would, right? But then I can also say, how many students are from New York? And it's using that context window and that memory from the previous question to say, okay, he must be referring to Howard University, and the model will respond back approximately 5% are from the state of New York. Then you can ask another follow-up question and say, how many people are majoring in computer science? So that's a context window. It's basically taking the context from the previous prompts, and now you can have a conversation with the data. And that's what a large language model allows you to do, allows you to have a conversation that's different than interrogation of the model. When you do Excel, you're interrogating the data. Show me what my graph looks like if I just do rows X and L. Sort these particular columns by zip code. You're interrogating the data as opposed to having a conversation with the data. So I think we have a process by which to ask questions. So let's start way back. Alan Turing, any computer science majors or majored in computer science, familiar with the Turing machine and the Turing test? Okay, so this is way back. He pretty much proposed the idea of a universal machine, and the team that he was leading came up with this term artificial intelligence. It was coined at Dartmouth, the Dartmouth Conference in 1956. So some people think artificial intelligence just happened in the last 10 years. No, we've had a lot of, peaks and valleys, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So this is the 1940s to 1950s. Alan Turing proposed this idea of a universal machine. So then we get to the 1960s, 1980s, some of the year that I was born, where they started using rules and logic to solve problems. Right? So 1960s, 1980s, Excel would be considered AI. Just to put it in perspective for you, that would be considered AI in 1960s to 1980s. And they were actually using it to diagnose people. What is that? WebMD? Those people type in, here are my symptoms, and it'll give you the most likely ailment that you may have, and it may ask you a series of questions, and it narrows down based on the symptoms, what you may have. So that's getting better and better, but that's kind of where it was used. Expert system is what that's called. AI winter. This is where it just didn't meet expectations. People thought it was going to change the world in 1980s and 1990s, and it just didn't. That was called the AI winter. So as a result, a lot of organizations were decreasing the amount of funding. And you also think about what makes AI so powerful is the compute that's gotten cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. Now, if you were to try a GPU, I don't think a GPU existed in the 1980s, but if you tried to buy a GPU back in that time, it might fill up this room right here. So technology kind of accelerated the access to AI. 1990s, so computing power. How many people, what's that Moore's law? Anybody familiar with Moore's law? Moore's law is like not a thing anymore, right? And basically I think it was like every 18 months, the capacity of a transistor was going to double in size. You were to put more information. I think that's probably quadruple now, right? So you think of you could probably build a small language model on your laptop, a commodity laptop. So compute has gotten so much cheaper. So that brings up a point that I often think about. If I'm in an underrepresented community, where do I invest for my students, for my parents, for my taxpayers? If I'm a business owner, do I invest in the compute that powers AI? How do I educate my students and how they can use AI in good, ethical, good citizen type of ways? Because it is a technology. But all AI is trained on models, it's trained on data, it's trained on what it kind of scrapes off the internet. How many people have submitted a prompt to ChatGPT and you got back a response that didn't make any sense to you? So it's scraping the internet, right? And for what I understand, I think it's running out of data. So it's looking at dissertations that have been published, it's looking at presentations that have been delivered, it's looking at all that data and it's pulling it together to give you a response. So you may think that your response is very conversant, and in some cases it is because the AI is getting better and better at learning. It's not sentient. What I mean by sentient, it can't sense or feel emotion, but it is getting better at reasoning and logic at scale. And I'll tell you some uses, well, I'll tell you now. Some of the things that we're doing, that we're exploring, is using AI to create efficiencies at work. So, for example, we have when an Intel analyst writes a report, they have to adhere to analytic integrity standards. And if that report does not comply with those standards, then that report is not going out to a customer. Um, there's some automation there, but it still takes a lot of time. So one of the things that we're doing is we know what the analytic integrity standards are. We can upload that into ChatGPT, and now we can feed ChatGPT a report and say, "Is this report comply with these standards?" Now, some may say, "Okay, well, somebody's job is gone." Well, no, because what you really need to combine with that AI is a human to say, well, yeah, that makes sense, right? Because even though AI can reason in logic, you still need that human to come in and say, yep, I agree. That makes sense. That logic follows. I can see how that conclusion, how the logic came to that conclusion. Second thing I want you to walk away with is AI provides context to the content. We'll talk a little bit about that. So data would be the content, but AI provides that context to the data. Okay, and so it's not just okay. Give me 15 um, ideas for X, Y, and Z. It can do that, but if you say give me 15 ideas for a set of fourth graders that live in Washington D.C. and connect it to historical figures in Washington D.C., it can give you that text for it, which makes it really, really powerful. All right. Machine learning, some people have used AI, machine learning interchangeably. Machine learning is pretty much, is it malware, is it not malware? Or I could say, how many people remember way back in the day, it might have been Sesame Street, where it says all these things go together. Am I the only one that remembers that? Okay, all right. So um, machine learning kind of knows what it knows, and you can train it, right? And so supervised learning would be, okay, I know what malware looks like, and I know what a benign sample looks like. You feed that in, you train the model with that, and then when you have a new sample, machine learning can say, based on what I already know, the likelihood of this being malware is X or Y. Neural language processing is really what ChatGPT goes. And if you, I can give you a big, a long lecture on what natural language processing is, but it's really kind of understanding the language as you're saying. Like I can understand what you're writing. Sometimes that gets a little tricky because certain words mean different things in different cultures. Can someone give me an example of a word that means different things in different cultures? Okay, I'll give you one. So, and maybe this is true in other states as well. I'm originally from New York City. Anybody from New York? Nobody from? All right. So, if you in New York, the term you're good can mean different things, right? It could mean, hey, I'm really concerned about, your welfare. It could also mean, is there a problem? It could also mean, do we still have a problem? Or does it mean you have what you need? It can mean a lot of different things. And I could say it to him without any explanation. He would know which version I want to use, right? AI hasn't gotten there yet. Okay, so it's not going to come in and be able to just react to things that you type in it, and you expect it to know the context. You have to train it to do that. All right, in generative AI, how many people have used? They call it stable diffusion, but it's like text to image. You say, "Give me an image of X, Y, and Z," and it gives you an image. Anybody use that? That's being used in a lot of election malign influence campaigns to generate images that will really kind of get at people's emotion to kind of influence their votes. And I'm not talking about particular country. I'm just saying in general as a technique that is being done. There even technology now from generative AI where they could take maybe a photo of me and they can clone my voice and they can have me participate in a Zoom session. And unless you're really paying attention, you won't be able to see that this is just AI just moving my lips and responding. That actually is, you can do that today. And I'm not going to tell you where to go to do that because I don't want people going home and trying to do that, but it's there. So just think of, your favorite, you know, president of your high school student association, voice being cloned, image being tampered with, and put in a Zoom session saying things that you don't agree with. It's happening today, and people need to educate themselves about, okay, well, how do I determine if this is real or not? Some people go one option and say, well, I don't believe anything. Okay, and that's not necessarily true. We could talk about technologies that are looking to provide um, explainability. Explainability is not so much citation, and this is where I want to make sure people walk away with. Um, how many people have written a term paper in high school or college? And at the end, you have to write, what is it called? Starts with a B, bibliography. So if I could tell you where I got the information, does that make it true? How many people remember? I think it's still out. It's called the National Enquirer. It's called a tabloid, right? Now I could tell you that such and such passed away because I read it in the National Enquirer, and I can give you the link and the page number that I got it from. Does that make it true? So just citing your sources. So you can go into ChatGPT today and you can say, give me 5 ideas for teaching AI to fourth graders and give me your references. Doesn't make it true, doesn't make it appropriate, doesn't make it consistent. So you have to check that. So Spotify. How many people use Spotify? I use Spotify. Nobody. I'm the only one who use Spotify. Okay, I happen to like Spotify because it kind of knows what I like. Most of them do. I think there are others out there. Pandora operate kind of on the same vein. Amazon. Amazon says people who were brought this also brought this. Um, ChatGPT has a little trophy over it because I think what it could do is it can actually say, I'm looking for a bow tie, Old Bay bow tie. Give me the websites that have it at the cheapest price, but give me the senior citizens discount. And it'll point you to that. And it can interact with other websites. So it's becoming more and more powerful. What about Netflix? Who has Netflix? All right, they're using AI to kind of generate content that, yeah, you might be interested in this particular. So these are all kind of harmless uses of AI that people use in their everyday life, right? How many people use Siri? Okay, virtual assistants. Those are everyday life type of things that you wouldn't think twice of asking what my commute is going to be like from X, Y, and Z. Right? But think about where are they? Are they storing your prompt somewhere? Does anybody know? Right. So if you use how many people use Waze versus Google Maps? Where's my Waze folks? Where are my Google Maps folks? It's too bad. Um, I'm a Waze. A Waze will take you through somebody's backyard to get you to your destination on time. So I think Waze. But again, I just want to stress these are everyday things that don't intuitively inflict on our privacy, but you're giving up information, right? How many people get those? If you have an Amazon Echo, it says, "Hey, you brought this thing 5 days ago. How many stars would you give it?" You're like, mind your business. Nobody tell them. Those are the things we need to be concerned about. So the technology can provide convenience, but what about privacy? What about safety? Right? Suppose I asked ChatGPT, I have a headache. What home remedy can I take? Would you ask ChatGPT that question? No. Why not? Right? Kind of the same concept. Okay, why should you care? So when I talk about bias and discrimination, how many people have heard of them using facial recognition? I think Baltimore just approved the use of facial recognition, but they have some caveats that I kind of reviewed that. And caveats, if used properly, I think will be fine. But they're also used to, in some cases, have identified people who were innocent, and people of color have been misidentified as being, a person of interest. I'll put it that way. Uh, Sometimes people use AI to create a list of candidates that they're going to interview for a position, right? And so they'll feed it hundreds and hundreds of resumes, and the AI is going by the name and maybe going by the school. There are other things that, if they set those guardrails, and it can be discriminatory. And so, how do we make sure that there's standards? Because I don't think there's standards out there to saying, hey, all AI must be complicit with X, Y, and Z, at least not that I'm aware of. Even if there are standards, are they enforceable? Right? We have some vendors who are saying they do AI, but they're calling it machine learning. So it's not AI, so I don't have to abide by privacy, bias, or discrimination, or things of that nature. How do you get your third grader surfing the internet when they have content fed to them to really question that content to make sure that it's true? And that's going to be really, really hard to do. Invasion of privacy, we talked about misinformation and manipulation. If you use, I was playing with Bing the other night. Anybody use Bing for image creation? It's really good. It has some issues. Sometimes it'll use the same face in multiple variations of an image, but it's pretty much taking images off the internet and recreating its own version of that. Any artists in the room? Paint, draw, graphic artists? So there's a debate going on in terms of if you generate an image with AI, is that copyrightable or are you plagiarizing someone else's image? It's taking images that it knows about, is found on the internet, and recreating it. What about music? There's AI now that can actually write lyrics for songs, and people are doing that and having those songs published. Is that legitimate? Are you fine with that? Right? So those are the things related to misinformation, but manipulation. They really want to get to your emotion. Like one of the things in Baltimore right now that at least concerns me, and it's not just Baltimore. I'm talking about the Maryland area, different counties, specifically Harford County, is that the rise in violence in the high schools. So if I'm running for a council position and I want to use AI to really get my agenda out, maybe I don't agree whether we should decrease violence in high schools, but I want to get elected. So I can use AI to proliferate a message of misinformation at scale. When I say at scale, maybe before AI, I can only reach 1 million people. Now I can reach 5 million people, and I can create 10 different versions of my message at scale. That's what AI could do for you. One of the things that we being the National Security Agency, and I have to say this publicly, is we have this document. Well, this chapter in the document is the fourth chapter of this document, also known as the Fourth Amendment. How many people know what the Fourth Amendment is? Okay, please tell me you know what the Fourth Amendment. Oh, yes. All right. And so we cannot do anything that's going to violate the Fourth Amendment of United States citizens. And so that's very hard for a lot of different ways of not defending it. But AI is making it even harder to do because we don't know if something is AI generated, if it's real, or what. I mean, there are technologies that you can use to detect these things, but it's not easy and it's not cheap. But how do we get access to those technologies to our underserved communities? Those are the things that I kind of think about. You know, I happen to be in a field where I have access to that. I don't know. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, in Bedford Stuyvesant. Do those kids have access to the same things I have access to? I don't know. And I'll get probably more into that during the questions if you have to. Displacement and exploitation in the workforce. Who here is from Baltimore? Okay. No one here is from Baltimore? Well, the longshoremen strike was paused for 90 days because they wanted more wages. And one of their issues was in addition to wages, I think they're going to get something like a 62% raise over the next 6 years. But one of their main issues was automation, and they're afraid of automation taking over their jobs. Not necessarily AI, but I could see robots actually, you know, controlling inventory, redirecting schedules, and things of that nature. And so that's what people are really concerned about. Placement of, suppose you want, I think there's a effort to build a, what do you call that? Funeral homes, a building when people want to have their ashes burned. What is that called? What's that? Crematorium. So AI could be used to say, give me the best locations to build a crematorium based on the demographics and financial resources of a community. What is the strength of the politicians in that area that would fight back against approving a crematorium? You can't ask Excel that question, but you can ask ChatGPT that question. And that's what really concerns me about that. So only for techies, it's not, you can go to ChatGPT and you can use it. How many people are familiar with retrieval augmented generation? Okay, let me explain what that is in English. Pardon me. So retrieval augmented generation, what it's designed to do is to kind of reduce the probability of hallucinating or the model making up content. So you're giving it the content that you want it to use to respond back to you. So if, just like I gave the example of, I have the analytic integrity standards, I'm going to put that in the large language model, and then I'm going to put a new report and ask that model, is this report comply with those standards? So you're giving it the sources that you want it to use to respond back. It's not bulletproof, because really it's not really going through the entire document. It's taking certain pieces of the document and see how close it is to your prompt. So we can get into the math and the computer science of that. How many people took geometry? Okay. How many, any mathematicians in here? Okay. So what it does is it takes a document and it what's called vectorizing, where it says, okay, this is a 0, this is a 1, this is a 2, and it takes the cosine of the angle between those vectors. And if the cosine of 0, I'm sorry, cosine of 90 is what, 1, I forget. That means that this is plagiarized or not. Okay, so when you do a retrieval augmented generation, it's not going to be completely going through the entire document and pulling out the relevant parts. So it still has a way to go, but it's getting much better. Um, is fully autonomous? It's not. Because one thing you can do, you can give the model feedback and say, yep, that was a good answer, or no, that wasn't a good answer, or let me give you some additional context so when I ask the prompt again, it can do that. There's also what's called a system prompt for AI. And a system prompt is, you can say, okay, ChatGPT, you are the president of an IT firm, and my prompts are going to be within that context. Answer them as the president of an IT firm. That's called a system prompt. Or you can say, you are the owner of a nursery, and I'm talking about, like, plants, soil, things of that nature. Answer my question with that expertise. So you're kind of telling the model to answer within a certain context of expertise. It can do that now. It's very, very powerful to do that. It does not understand language like humans unless you train it, and it's just a fad. I think with the compute power that is being made available, it is not going to be a fad. It's here to stay, and it's going to be completely transformative in how we do things. There are there are militaries that are inserting AI into their weapons. So let me give you an example. Let's say that you have a fighter jet and it's using AI to identify whether a tank is an enemy tank or not. And it's using AI to do image detection. So it has in its knowledge what a enemy tank looks like, and if it gets a match, it's going to fire that. There'll be a kinetic strike on that. What happens if you get it wrong? People think, well, it's a risk discussion at that point. How much am I willing to risk on getting it wrong and killing a friend and not a foe? They're using it to keep track of people and what they're posting online, to try to get sentiment and use that sentiment to generate new content. So the point I want to take away is that even though some things are myths, there's going to be a time when they're going to be stringing different modes together. So remember I talked about the fake image and the fake voice in a Zoom meeting, right? So maybe an adversary, they're more sophisticated now. They will send you, participate in a Zoom message. They'll send you a public service announcement, and then they'll follow that up with an email. And some people, just the proximity of those things will lead people to believe that it's true. This can't be a convenience. This can't be just coincidence. And they understand that. So there's a certain cognitive psychology aspect of this that people are getting smart on. So it's not just for technical people in computer science, but if you understand how people think, how they reason, what gets them to emote, what do they care about, you can use that against them. And that's what adversaries are doing. They're weaponizing these things using AI. AI doesn't know what the truth is. AI doesn't know about racism. It doesn't. So we can't pretend that it does. When we say it's biased, is because it was trained in a biased way, not because it's inherently biased. It is just math. But if you train AI on a bunch of 6 foot people who are 6 feet and taller, and you give it somebody who's under 6 feet, so they don't know what to do with that. Are they going to give you an answer based on what it knows? So that's something that we really need to be concerned about. Really. Okay, threats. We talked about autonomous weapons, surveillance systems. Um, there's certain countries that are using that to identify um, people who may have criminal activity going on. Um, surveillance systems in the United States. If you're a federal entity, there are laws against that, but surveillance is a really relegated to law enforcement. Deep fake technology is getting really, really good. Um, there's a technology now where I was playing with it the other day, and you have to search it because I'm not pumping up technologies, but it's a voice cloner, and it can clone my voice and then use it in other aspects to read different material. And my wife couldn't even tell the difference between this technology and my actual voice. That's how scary that is getting. Vulnerability discovery. So, what from a cybersecurity perspective, they're using AI to say how many people are familiar with common vulnerability exposure, the CVEs. They're taking that list, they're putting that into large language models, and they're saying, here are the CVEs. I want you to tell me what technologies are vulnerable to this particular exploit, and it'll give you back the list. And you can even say, sometimes people who develop these models will say, if someone asks you a prompt that is unethical, don't respond. You can say that, but if you can, you can get around that in a lot of different ways. So vulnerability discovery is used to actually close vulnerabilities, but it's also being used to find them and exploit them at scale. We talked about spear phishing. We talked about social manipulation. One of the things that's going on right now, people are just finding out that John Amos died back in August. Some people thought he died recently because of the timing of the post. How many people, John Amos, Good Times, anybody? Um, malware development, I talked about that, and I also talked about multimodal hacking campaigns. And the people doing this, when I said bad guys and girls, these people are in high school. These are not people who have, masters and PhDs in computer science. And they're going to be getting younger and younger because they interact with technology every day. So the cybersecurity threat is really, really there. And what makes it hard for not just us, but for other intelligence communities is that we have this Fourth Amendment. And if we believe a United States citizen is doing something related to terrorism, we have to go to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court to get a warrant. We just can't roll somebody up just because we think that they're doing something bad. Transforming industries, healthcare. It's being used in healthcare, not so much to diagnose, but to get more accuracy in some of the diagnosis. In education, I know there's some schools that have plagiarism detectors built into some of their curriculum, but students are using that to write papers and things of that nature. Finance, we talked about Spotify and other smart assistants, but I think it has the opportunity to do a lot of good. It has the ability to really give access to people who don't have access. And some of it's going to start probably in the school system, but also courses related to not just security, but trust, bias, privacy, safety. Those are the elements of technology that we seem to kind of overlook until something happens. And we really need to invest in that. Politics, that goes without saying, I'm not going to get into politics, but it's rampant. You may not see it because some people probably don't read a physical paper or they probably don't watch the news, but it's rampant out there in terms of using AI to influence politics. So, how do you protect yourself? A while ago, I gave a kind of intro to cyber to a group of seasoned citizens at a church. And these are people who are probably 70 years or older who don't really know what to trust. They'll get an email. My mother in law calls me at least once a week. got this email. What should I do? Don't do anything with it. Delete it. Um, they'll call. Hey, I need your bank account number. You really have to educate and just talk to people. Talk to your parents. Talk to your grandparents about being more careful. I have no problem with my mother-in-law calling me and asking me a question and answering the same question over and over again, because the risk of not doing that is greater. And I want her to be educated. I don't want her to live in fear. I just want her to be armed with information. Um, Strong passwords, two-factor authentication. Some people like to post a lot of information on Facebook. Um, Please don't post. I don't mind seeing pictures of your kids. Please don't post their age and the grade and the school that they're in. Please don't post class pictures on your Facebook page, because large language models are scooping all of that up. Um, Recognizing phishing scams, and there's a lot of ways to identify that. Um, if you don't trust it, like certain companies will not send you an email, they will send you a letter. So make sure you read the policy about how that organization is going to get in contact with you in case there's a problem. So in case you get an email that doesn't have your name on it and doesn't have a phone number to call somebody back, it's probably fake. All right. So we talked about a couple of things. We defined AI and how it worked, how it's integrated into everyday life. I would like to have more discussion, if we have time, about ethical issues related to AI. Um, it's the myths associated with it, how you feel it's impacting you. What are some unanswered questions that you have about AI? And hopefully someone have questions on that. And how it is crucial. People who are not using AI are going to be far less productive than people who are. It's just a fact. So if you want to just check out, fine. I think that's my last slide. Yes, that's my last slide.
All right, Dr. Ferguson, thank you. We have a few minutes for questions. So as I get set up and put the QR code up on the screen for everyone to submit their questions, the first question that came in is, when a citizen hears that AI is being integrated into some process for anything, whether it be policing or any other sort of civil activity, what are two or three critical questions that they should think to ask about how that technology is being implemented, whether that be in the way of the data or what have you?
Yes, good question. Whoever asked the question, thank you for that question. I think the first question I was asked is, how was that technology trained? What data did you use, and where did you get it from? So, what some of the things at least in the intelligence community and even in federal government, is that we're looking for a model card. So, think of a baseball card. So, if model X, how was this model trained? What is its error rate? What is its success rate? And get that information back from those are the questions that I would ask. How is it trained and on what population? Is there a follow-up question to that, or people are good?
Apologies, one moment. There we go. So if anyone has questions, please just scan that QR code with your phone and submit them, and we'll get them asked.
Okay.
As well as, if there are any questions that we don't have time to answer later, we can submit them to Dr. Ferguson and aggregate them so that we can send them out to all of the email addresses that registered for the event.
Are there any other questions?
So the next question that we had come in is, what are some of the pitfalls to AI that are not so obvious? We talk about we talk about data and how important data is and how it can create bias in AI. But what are one or two other pitfalls that people should be aware of as to how AI could be potentially harmful to humanity?
I think one pitfall is not including a human in the use of the results that AI gives you. So there's this concept of human machine teaming. So you can let the AI, for example, if you're trying to do malware analysis and you say, AI, go find me all the things in this particular sample size that are malware or have been used in the last year, it'll give you a bunch of samples, and you need a human to go through and kind of verify that. So the one pitfall is not having the human, just relying on the AI to make that decision. Would you allow a fighter pilot to make that decision to send a missile or not without any intervention? Maybe, but that's where we're going with that. What's another pitfall? Believing that your model is going to work in every context, right? So things that might work in the African American community may not work in other communities, and vice versa. You need to be sensitized to that. There's certain things that don't resonate with us that resonate with other cultures. I'm just speaking from the culture I happen to be a member of, so I'm sure it exists for other cultures as well. So that context is really, really important. And I think you can train AI to say hey, I don't understand the context. Please provide more information. Right? You can design it to do that, to have what's called guardrails. If it asks anything related to race or racist activity, you can say, don't respond to that, or ask them to go into another source. You can build that in. So it's not bulletproof, but it's not just completely vulnerable.
All right. And the final question is, can you discuss the environmental impact of the infrastructure needed to support artificial intelligence technology? Things like nuclear cooling, water cooling, and what are some of the things that we should be concerned about as far as the impacts to the environment?
So not one of my superpowers, understanding environmental impact, but I would say a couple of things. It is going to be an impact about where they're building these GPU farms, and these GPU farms are the compute that they need to run these large language models. And in some cases, when you think about combining GPUs with something like cryptocurrency and things of that nature, they're going to be looking for um, places to build this infrastructure where there's going to be probably, in my opinion, a little bit of resistance. I can't say I'm familiar with the environmental impacts. I'm not saying that there isn't. I just don't know. I'd have to educate myself on that. That's just not a sector that I'm involved in environmental. As a U.S. citizen, I want to make sure that they're not displacing people who don't have anywhere to go. So, for example, any place that um, people are losing their homes, or and they can't afford to go to the new town or city that they're being displaced to. Is it going to displace people? I think it will. In what ways? I really don't know. It's going to be in the name of technology. So what should we do about that? We got to continue to ask questions. We got to continue and don't show up at council meetings when there's a problem. Show up at council meeting when everything is going great. And say, hey, just want to make sure that this is on your agenda because we're tracking this, and empower yourself to do that.
All right. And we have time for one more with a quick response. Uh, are there any ways that we can protect ourselves from copyright laws in the way of the generative data or the responses that AI produces?
That's a really good question. And I really don't know, because there's an argument to be made that the data that is being stolen or taken is publicly available. And so if I'm using publicly available data, then you have to prove that this is your content. There was a woman on the podcast I was listening to the other day, and I don't agree with her. She's basically saying that she's a recording artist or a producer. She makes music. And she was saying that AI is actually stealing content from music writers. And that's not the part I disagree with. What she's saying is that she compared it to a car in New York City is publicly available, but if you steal it, you will go to jail. I think that's a reach. I don't think my car is publicly available, right? It's parked in public, but it's not available, right? You have to have both of those conditions in order for, so it is getting more and more attention. My brother is a graphic design artist, and he's pretty good at what he does. I'm like, are you going to be like out of a job soon with this AI? And he says he's not worried because the quality and the resolution required for some of these graphic designs, AI is not there yet. And but however, for concept drawings and concept modes of communication, it's pretty good to generate ideas. So again, it gets back to that human machine teaming. We don't have time any more questions, but one thing I would really encourage people to do is, if you have a curious young man or woman, if you're a teacher, have them explore these issues. If someone's not, doesn't want to go into technology, have them, investigate the ethical abuses and misuses of AI. How can it disenfranchise underserved people? How do we get access to the technology boom that's happening right before us? How do I become a player in that? Those are the things we need to kind of empower ourselves with to make sure we understand. Thank you for your time. I will be around all day. Um, and I appreciate you. Thank you for the questions. And who do I turn this back over to?